Okay, good. Shall we start? Can you start now?
Yeah, Kapil.
Okay, good. So let's okay, it's 1:12 now. Okay, let's start. Now today also, like we discussed earlier, we thought of having some sort of an educational slot. Saja Khan shared some interesting information last time about power banks and UPSs. And today I just wanted to invite Delmer. So he is going to tell you about what you should know about solar power. Right. So I will hand it over to Delmer. And also going forward, if there's any one of you who think that, okay, you can share something of educate the other colleagues, just let me know, or me or Nipunika know today itself or within the next week, so that we'll give the time slot to you. Right. So please do that, so that if there's something that is interesting that you can share, probably Nishanta can say something about the customs, Nalaka can say something about telecom, Nalaka Hettiaracha can tell something about gas prices, all of that. So let's see what you can do. Just let us know. So today it will be to Delma. Delma, over to you. You can take over.
Okay, thank you, Kapila. So I didn't have much time. Kapila put me on the hot seat today in the morning. So unlike Saja Khan, I thought, given the time of the day, I thought I'll share with you some trivia about the solar industry. So let me first start with a question from you. In your opinion, how old is now? If you hold your hand outside now, if you are in a reasonably lit up area, the sunlight falling onto your hand, how old do you think it is? Can somebody answer that? There are engineers here. There are multiple people. Can I get an answer for that? Just take a wild guess.
About 4 solar years, there, 4.5 solar years. The light miles, like what do you call?
No,
years.
Actually, yeah. So if we measure it by days or minutes or whatever, so it's about, or you can take a year. Now, can you all see the picture which I have shared?
Yes.
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 Okay. So that
This
is
the
actually
Earth, right?
Sorry.
This is the Earth. Yeah.
Yeah, Earth is where my. Can you see my mouse pointer?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is Earth, right? So you can. This is a scale model of the solar system. So you can actually see how small we are compared to the sun and the relative distances. Okay. So from the time light is made out of photons. A photon, by the time it comes to the sun's surface, it takes roughly about 8 minutes and 4 seconds to reach Earth. That's how fast it comes, right? But here's the thing: the photon is made at the sun's core, somewhere in the core. I'm not an engineer and I'm nor a nuclear physicist, but it is made in the core. And can anybody guess how long it will take for a photon from the sun's core to come to its surface? Can anybody make a guess? Saja Khan, any ideas?
A millisecond.
How much?
The millisecond time.
Millisecond time. Anybody got a different idea? Okay, in the interest of time, I'll tell you what it is. It's about 100,000 years, Earth years, right? So just to put things in scale, what does 100,000 means? Can you see this? Can you see so, just to, majority is Buddhist here. So Lord Buddha, Gautama Buddha came about what, 2,500 years ago? Right? Human existence, the archaeological evidence starts somewhere around 10,000 years ago. So time tells. So what we are using now actually started off in the core of the sun about 100,000 years ago. Am I making sense? Yeah. So the solar energy that we use in our homes actually is old energy that comes to us, right? So 100,000 years from the core to the sun, then thereafter it's about 8 minutes, 4 seconds to reach Earth. Okay, let me move to a different topic. Now, based on, so I had to quickly pull these numbers from the web. The world's energy demand, right? If you take world's energy demand can be met by, can you see this number? 51,350,000,000 solar modules. So 350 means capacity of each module, right? If you take a 350 solar module, capacity solar module, you need about 51 billion of that module, numbers of that solar module. And it will require something like 115,000 square miles. Can anybody visualize what is the size of this area? Take a wild guess. So let me show you what it is. This is United. Can you all see this?
Yes, Delmer, we can see.
Yeah. So this is United States. That area we are talking about is this New Mexico area. That is to meet world's energy demand. Huh? This is not my numbers. I'm just pulling it out from the web. So, but as we speak, this area became small because right now, that 350 watt solar module we are talking about, actually what we are right now, the same module can produce about 550 watts. So this area just became small. Right. So the message I want to give, if you know that right now there's this COP, the COP26 or whatever the summit is going on about global pollution control and greenhouse gas emission and all that. If we are really serious about it, you know how much of this is the kind of area we need to meet the energy demand. But this is just to give you a graphical idea about where we are right now. But in practically, you cannot put solar modules in Mexico and take electricity to Holland or Sri Lanka or whatever. But comparatively speaking, given the land mass we have, we don't need to put huge areas of solar to cover our energy requirement. Same applies to Sri Lanka. The other thing is, now Sri Lanka, there's solar industry is facing a lot of problems. I touched upon it earlier during another comment I was making. So the biggest, here also the bit like the topic we were discussing today, Kapila's discussion, you have Department A, Department B, like that in Sri Lanka, there are different entities with vested interests. Now CEB is naturally trying to get their profits up, but there's a price the country pays as a whole, because if you Sajakan, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, most of our power supply, there are two sources. One is thermal generation, the other one is hydro. If you take thermal, I think the generation loss is somewhere around 40 to 30%. Meaning, simply put it, from layman's point of view, if you burn 1,000 kilojoules of fuel, only about 600 you will get as electricity, right? Then from Keravalapiti or whatever the power plant to transmit to your house, there's another energy loss, which I am told around another 40%, right? So what this means is that oil that we procure from outside countries, about I would say 30-40% is lost due to inefficiencies in production and inefficiencies in transmission. So what we are saying as the industry, why don't you give that, use that amount to incentivize the local solar industry, give various in Europe and all that, they give multiple incentives, lower interest loans, tax rebates for those people who are investing in solar. So, if you take Germany, a lot of people are putting their, now the situation has changed, but most of the pension funds have invested in solar because there's good returns to be made. Same can be said about Sri Lanka also, if the right incentives are given. So that is just to give you an overall picture of the solar situation. I didn't go into nitty-gritties, but just to get you thinking, where we are and what we can do if the political will is there. Yeah, with that, I will end my small talk.
Thank you, Delma. Small question from me. Now, say if you want to have this much of power generating capacity, whatever the metals that go into the construction of solar cells, will that be available on whatever the material that is available on Earth to build this much of solar panels? Is it available? Whatever the costs or whatever, I don't know what exactly the material that goes into this.
Actually, if you take a solar module, the main element, which is silicon,
right,
which is found in abundance, right? But to produce, convert silicon, it's silicon valley, there are classes of silicon. So to convert silicon into a solar cell, it requires quite a bit of electrical energy. So it's a highly energy consumptive exercise. But once made, once it's converted, it can last for more than 30, 40 years. And the production efficiency of a solar module drops over a 20-year period by only about 20%. Actually, now the latest data says it's about less than that even. So just to give you an idea, if you install 100 kilowatts now, in 20 years time, you will at least have 80 kilowatts left. That capacity directly correlates to your production. If you are generating now 100,000 kilowatt hours, in 20 years time, you will at least generate 80,000 kilowatt hours. So it's a very, although the initial capital investment is high, the productive period of the asset is also equally reliable and long lasting. So as far as I'm concerned, and I may not be the right person to answer your question with authority, Kapila, but the base element is found in abundance. Right now, the problem is there's a competitive demand from auto industry, computers, because all the chips that are used are coming from the same basic raw material, which is silicon. So right now there's a dearth in that.
Right. Understand. Thanks.
So if you can give me 2 minutes, 2 areas which I thought of putting some input on this one. I also have a little experience on this solar and putting up this new solar businesses in Sri Lanka. There are 2 main challenges. One thing is if you put a solar module or you create a solar farm, you need land space. So one aspect of this, we will either go a rooftop area which is isolated. We'll take that rooftop area and put the panels. The other aspect is if an industry who want to invest on this solar business, sell it to our utility companies, they will take a land and they do deforestation and put the solar cells as a farm. So I was actually visiting for a workshop in India. They found another mechanism where they put on top of the rivers and they put on top of them as floating solar panels. So then from that one, they reduced the evaporation, water evaporation. Now in Sri Lanka, the first method of wasting tank water, which we reserve for our cultivation and all, is evaporation. So they have found a method, they put on top of floating. So then deforestation can be reduced, and at the same time, it will be a mechanism to reduce evaporation.
Very good point.
If I've taken your time.
No. I mean, very good observation or very good point, Sajakan. So actually, I don't know whether you are aware, we Sri Lankans are very good in talking about projects, but not implementing. The very idea was to be done at Tiavanna near the parliament. And also there was talk that they are going to do it in Victoria or one of the reservoirs. But it is still limited to talk. possibly somebody is expecting a big cut and the projects are not taking off because, the project viability is a question mark once those cuts are made. I mean, simply put it,
Yeah, in fact, Dilma, now the period which I got to know, that time the solar's, the entire panel was around 250 watt. That means like 5 to 8 years before actually. Now
Yes,
even
yes,
it has
yes.
gone to that level. We should be sorry actually. We have not implemented and gone to such extent actually.
Yes, and there's another benefit of putting floating solar. That's mostly fish breeds under shady. I mean, api ara malu allana thankala dakinne me kola wage dala rawumak hadana eke yatata thamai malu avilla inne. They breed under that. So actually there's other additional benefit of doing this. So I think India is converting a lot of their canalways with solar.
Correct.
And I for a fact know this happened about 7 years ago in Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia. So yeah, yet to do that, but the local industry is aware of it, but implementation is bogged down because of bureaucratic red tape and so many other things.
And the most important thing is this energy doesn't have any waste like LNG or diesel or any carbon related material. So what we are producing apart from the hydroelectricity, there is a huge amount of carbon waste. Our carbon footprint from electricity itself is very high actually as a country. So if you go to city area, because of all this carbon dust and everything, because of these issues, and if we don't change, in fact, we will lead into more cancer patients, so many national level issues actually. So that will, hit our GDP and it will be a huge burden for our health costs.
Yeah, unfortunately, very true. Unfortunately, that cost is seen over a long period of time. So politicians typically has a time horizon of 5 years. So they will do anything that gives, soda bottle effect. The way health sector a cost, we will not feel now, but it will be felt generations to come. Is pollution related hidden costs. So those are not factored in actually. Mandanne ape decision makers la ogana dannawadath kiyala. But the very fact that you mentioned that the hidden cost of carbon-based energy generation.
Even in Sri Lanka, we are so lucky. We have around sunlight efficient, most efficient sunlight around 5 to 5.5 hours. So whereas I've been to Germany, because most of them you'll see they use bicycle, they use renewable energy, but they will have light for solar, maybe around less than 2.5 hours, 3 hours. But each and every apartment, hotel, everything they have converted. So we had a trend actually. A lot of customers were going for solar. All of a sudden, I think there were some problems, related to grid issues, technical problems. So after that, regime changes, the policy changes. So I still don't believe we have a national policy for this renewable energy.
We have, but it keeps changing. It's like Andu Maru, but on the other hand, if you look at some other countries that I have been, Sri Lanka is ahead of the.
Yes,
ahead of
we
them.
were way ahead, even from
Way ahead.
and for this one. So, and we have a huge level of technical professionals also in this area who is experienced like you all. And so we have a nice system, even regulated, system. Anybody can purchase from these vendors.
Yes.
But how efficient it is, people are getting converted to this renewable energy is a questionable thing.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I think we had a very interesting session. Probably you all can contact them if you want to have more details. But it's very interesting. Thank you for sharing this information, Dilma.
Thanks, Kapil. I sincerely hope I didn't put anybody to sleep.
No, definitely not. Thank you, Sajakan, for your input as well.
Thanks,
so let's get back to our discussion. Okay, thanks. Okay, so quickly to get back to our discussion here, I'm going to take a little bit longer, a little bit more, and then on this topic. So let me quickly switch to the slides here. This is where we were. So we were looking at performance evaluation measures, and then we were discussing measures of efficiency and measures of effectiveness. So that is where we were having this discussion, right? So this is where we stopped, right? Measures of efficiency is how well the inputs are converted to output. Measures of effectiveness is what extent that all aligned towards the action is aligned towards the achievement of the objective. Right? And then having said that, let's quickly look at them. When you say financial performance measures, there are financial performance measures and non-financial performance measures. What are the financial performance measures? We already discussed them and you already know. What are the financial performance measures that we have in organizations? Yes, tell me some. Yes. What are the financial performance measures we have?
The revenues,
Revenues.
costs,
Profit.
and profits.
Okay, EBITDA. Yes. Okay, financial performance measures could be our contribution, gross margin, operating profit margin, net profit margins, and then ROI, ROA, EBITDA, all of them, and even the variances, all of these things, ROA, all those things, they are financial performance measures. So they are expressed in monetary terms, and we may call them high-level financial and aggregate parameters. So these are high-level parameters most of the time. They are based on the P&Ls most of the time, and sort of aggregate parameters. So then, what are the non-financial measures that we have? What are the non-financial measures?
Like department-wise KPIs, strategic performance measures.
Okay, there are strategic performance measures, and yeah, especially the department functional, operational, process level. You have lots of KPIs and how well you are making use of your resources. That is one thing. And about the timing, the timelines, the lead times, all of these things, efficiencies, wastages, and then the revenue and the contributions generated, and lots of parameters are there. We are not going to go to a detailed discussion here, but these are operational level, more actionable measures which are non-financial. Right? These are high-level financial parameters. We say high-level, it may not go down to your showroom shelf level or production module level, or that level it may not go into the financial measures or the sales representative level. They are high-level, your P&L segment division level. But non-financial parameters, your efficiencies and the wastages and all those other parameters, which is a combination of the quantitative, other factors, and financial or non-financial factors, are more operational, more actionable measures. Right? Having said that, the next point is that we have measures which are quantitative measures, and there are things that qualitative things that we want to measure. So the quantitative measures that we want to measure, we already spoke about your financial returns and the inputs, output efficiencies, all of them. These are the measures that are expressed in numerical and financial terms. Quantitative measures, efficiency or your return, your profit, your margins, and your turnover, all those parameters, labor turnover, these are all expressed in numerical and or financial terms. There is a number attached to this measure. So then what are the measures that are, what are the parameters, what are the aspects that you're going to measure in qualitative terms? What are the qualitative things that you need to make an assessment of in an organization?
I don't know whether it is 100% qualitative, but things like staff turnover rates.
Like brand equity.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Staff turnover is a quantitative,
Quantitative, right? Yeah.
What is the qualitative aspect which is relating to, good point. What is the qualitative aspects relating to that staff turnover?
Staff satisfaction. Can that
Staff,
be like?
exactly. So it will be the employee satisfaction. So the final outcome, once it happens, it is a quantitative parameter, which is a staff turnover or the labor turnover. But the qualitative aspects, which can be proactive, is the employee satisfaction. Right? So, right, good. And then, okay, if it is the qualitative aspect is the employee satisfaction, okay, just park it for the time being. And then Sachkan mentioned about the brand equity. Anything else that you all want to add? What are the other qualitative aspects that we want to measure?
Customer satisfaction.
Customer satisfaction. What else?
Then
Employee
could be
satisfaction,
other stakeholders. Other stakeholders. Some industries quite take it very seriously, especially oil industry. This environmental impact.
Okay.
So
right.
so that's another qualitative criteria. You know how how do you go about conducting your business in an environmentally friendly way? What do you do to mitigate your impact? Things like that. Corporate social responsibility, all these things are.
Okay, and also, yeah, probably you can put it broader, saying, okay, triple bottom line, whatever the outcome, social, environmental, all those aspects, right? Okay, and then employee performance, what do you think? Is it quantitative or qualitative when you want to measure employee performance?
It's depend on the industry now, sir.
So, do you look at employee performance quantitatively or qualitatively? Depends on the industry, and yes, right. Okay.
And the amount of employee engagement. Now, for example, if it is a labor-intensive industry, we may have to look more into quality as well. And specialized craftsmanship is required. It's totally based on quality.
Okay, good. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's another dimension that you brought in. Yeah. Simply speaking, when you say, okay, there are qualitative aspects that we want to make an assessment of, there are quantitative things that we want to make an assessment of. And we have a clear idea of what are the quantitative things that you want to make an assessment of, for which you may have financial indicators as well as non-financial indicators. And then if it regards the qualitative aspects, we may not have a straightforward quantitative parameter to measure, but how do you think we can get because otherwise, if we don't have a quantitative parameter, so it is not really actionable, that measurement. So how can you bring in a quantitative parameter to a qualitative aspect? Like you mentioned, the employee satisfaction and engagement. Is there a possibility, how do you bring in a quantitative aspects to something like employee satisfaction, which is not straight away quantified?
There are some
bring a rating scale.
Sorry, go ahead, Sadhika.
We can bring a rating scale and rate according to that scale, maybe like.
Exactly. So the only way that we can do is, yes, we take a particular attribute that we want to make an assessment of, a particular aspect. So then we can segment them into different attributes that are related to that aspect. And then you may bring in some sort of a rating scale. Yeah. Say about that 1 to 10. Sorry.
Benchmark it within some industrial aspect.
Yeah, and then you can benchmark. So before, yes, that is true, to benchmark. So you may bring in, say, for example, if it is an employee satisfaction that you're trying to look at, is what are the different dimensions of employee satisfaction, right? In terms of, say, your own, what you think of your own, this is not a perfect thing, right? In terms of your own departmental area, what sort of working environment that you have and how comfortable you are with that, right? And in terms of the overall organizational point of view, what do you think? And in terms of your prospects for growth and taking initiatives and making decisions, what you feel. So like that, you may be segregating them into, based on certain theoretical models, what are the different dimensions that are important for employee satisfaction. And then what could happen is, based on that, you may be developing some sort of a questionnaire. You have the broad concept. You may identify the dimensions across which we are going to measure that. And then under each dimension, you may be developing certain questions. And those questions, you may link it to some sort of like a scale, 1 to 10 or whatever like that. And you get the people to give unbiased feedback to a set of questionnaires that you're going to complete. And then based on that, the feedback that you're going to get, finally, you can later on, you can convert these scales into the numbers. And finally, it will boil down to a singular number. So that is the way that we can do it. You can create a model and give a chance to do a rating. And then based on that, you can develop a quantitative model. Right, quantitative, not a quantitative model, we can develop quantitative parameters. So that once you develop that parameter, you can compare that. Say you have a parameter which is based on some sort of attributes that I told you. So once you calculate that, right, so then you can see this particular department